Okay, today we have Encore Lesson 76, and what we're looking at is how to solve the area of a trapezoid. So we know most of our discussion around area has been area is equal to base times height, or length times width, anything like that. However you want to actually define it. For our purposes, base and height, length, and width are the same thing. So if I have this trapezoid, which is this funny looking shape over here, a lot of our discussion has been, how can I take shapes that I already know, those basic shapes like triangles and rectangles, and how can I use them to solve a more difficult problem? So for example, if I had like a hexagon, I know that a hexagon, if I draw one here, is really that triangle 6 times. So I find whatever the area is of this triangle, and then I multiply it by 6, and I'll find the whole area of the hexagon. I can do the same thing with a trapezoid. You might say, well, what kind of weird shape is a trapezoid make when I flip it in upside down? Well, I'll show you. If I take this trapezoid right here, let's make that a little bigger actually, and I were to put a version of itself flipped upside down, just like we know with a rectangle, it's like a triangle flipped onto another triangle. I could do, this is 5 and 3. So if I come out 3 here, 1, 2, 3, and I come out 5 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what I've actually made myself, and I'll show it now in blue, is a parallelogram hidden inside this section here. So how do I get to that portion where I can solve a parallelogram of base times height and then divide it by 2? Just like, or multiply it by 1/2, just like I would with a triangle. Well, how do I get to that section? Well, I find the base here, and then I add it to the base here, and that would bring it out the entire section of the parallelogram. So in other words, this is 3, this base, plus this base of 5. My new base is 8. So I know that the formula I'm using for the parallelogram is area equals base times height. So the area now, my base is 8, and the height right here is at 4. Area equals base times height. So my area is 32 square inches, but that's of my parallelogram. I need to then find my trapezoid, which is 32 square inches, and then I'm going to divide it by 2. 32 divided by 2 will give me 16 square units, and that is my trapezoid right here. So if I look at one more of those, again I take this funny looking trapezoid and I flip it so that it's on top of itself, and now it makes a parallelogram. In this case would be a rectangle. I need to add this base with this base, because this is now 7 inches, this base would be 6 inches, and this is still 8 inches. Well, now I'm looking at area equals base, I add those together, times height. So area equals base times height. My base is now 13. 13 times a height of 8. And what I'm going to get is I come up here and I do 13 times 8. 8 times 3 is 24. Carry the 2. 8 times 1 is 8. Plus 2 more is 10. That's area equals 104. But that's the area of the parallelogram that I've created. I need to cut it in half. I just need this trapezoid. So in other words, I take 104 and I divide it by 2, and I would realize that I get 52 inches squared. They've already included your unit rate. If they don't include your unit rate, make sure that you include your unit rate, because there's a big difference between inches squared, yards squared, kilometers squared, or if I'm dealing in volume, I could be missing an entire dimension, right? I could be looking for 3 dimensions. I only have 2. Big differences there. So let's go ahead and do one more. I'll just show you one more for your homework here. Parallelogram, we know that when we flip it on itself, we've inverted it. This section is 10 foot because that's the bottom section here. Top section would now be down here at 4 foot. I'm going to add those together. I get area equals base times height. My base is now 14 and my height is 5. And that's the parallelogram that I've made, putting my 2 trapezoids together. 14 times 5 will give me 70, equals 70 feet squared, but I'm not done yet because that's the parallelogram. I need to cut that in half and say 70 divided by 2, my area is, not 45, 35 feet squared. Take 70, divide it by 2. 2 goes into 7 3 times. 6, bring down your 0. 2 goes into 10 5 times. 35. Now, why did I divide by 2? Again, I made a parallelogram by doubling my trapezoid on top of itself. Just like I could take my triangle here and put another one here, solve it for base times height, but then I need the 1/2 to get back to the original triangle. Same idea with this trapezoid. Okay, so to sum it all up, you're going to find the area, which is this base plus this base, times the height, and then divide by 1/2. So I guess just making sure that when you're drawing them out, you include both bases, the top and the bottom, in this particular one. Don't forget that you're solving for parallelograms, so always go back and double check your work, dividing by 2, so you can just get the original trapezoid.